Andriantsimitoviaminandriana, Andriantsimitoviaminandriana, also Andriantsimitoviaminandriandrazaka was king of Avaradrano in the central highlands of Madagascar from 1710 to 1730, and king of neighboring Ambohidrabiby after defeating his brother, Andrianavalonimerina. He was a son of Andriamasinavalona, sovereign of the former Kingdom of Imerina, and his wife Ratompoindraoandriana. Sometime during his life, Andriantsimitoviaminandriana adopted Rakotomavo, who would later succeed him as King Andriambelomasina. As a child, Andriantsimitoviaminandriana was sent to live in a village that his father named Ambohimanga. As a young man, his father granted him the region of Avaradrano surrounding the village, and while his father still lived, he managed the daily affairs of state in Avaradrano without taking the title of king. He declared Ambohimanga the capital of the region, building numerous structures on the site and adding its first set of defensive walls, ditches, and gates. The site's historic and cultural significance was recognized in 2001 when UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site, the only one in the cultural category in Madagascar. He became an independent king upon his father's death, and the resulting partition of the Kingdom of Imerina in 1710, from which he received Avaradrano, the easternmost and largest territory. He died around 1730 and was buried at Ambohimanga. Early life and family. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana was a son of Andriamasinavalona, monarch of the former Kingdom of Imerina, and his wife Queen Ratompoindraoandriana. As a child, Andriantsimitoviaminandriana was sent to live in a village that his father named Ambohimanga, where he occupied a house at a place called Mahazaza. As a young man, he married Rampanambinitini. Oral history provides two conflicting accounts of their marriage. According to one version, the couple had no children of their own, leading the king to adopt the 8 daughters and 5 sons of his sister Andriambelomasina. In another version, at least some of the 5 sons and 8 daughters issued from the king's marriage, and his son Rakotomavo was adopted from a woman called Andriamasinavalona. The remaining 4 sons were named Andriantorana, Andriamohara, Ratsimandjaka, and Andriampalomana, after the king's pet donkeys. The names of only 3 of his 8 daughters are preserved in the oral histories: Randriamizaza, Rahasatra, and Rahira. Adoption of Rakotomavo. 2 accounts exist regarding the adoption of Rakotomavo, whom Andriantsimitoviaminandriana designated to rule after him as King Andriambelomasina. According to the first version, Rakotomavo and Mandriamohara were sons of Rangoramanana. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana sent messengers to Rangoramanana to bring the boys to him with the instructions to take note of which child stood closer to the central pillar Andri, symbolic of strength of their mother's house. When the boys entered the house, Rakotomavo stood closer to the pillar. The children's relatives refused to allow the messengers to take the children, so the king sent them back with rice, milk, honey, and other goods, and successfully lured the boys away. In another version of the story, the king adopted all of the children of his sister Rangoramanana. He then devised a test to determine which one would succeed him. He requested his messengers to bring the children a package including lemons, meat, honey, rice, milk, and a reed, and to note which child took the reed and stood near the central pillar of the house. This child was Rakotomavo. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana selected Rakotomavo to succeed him and assigned the child to be the guardian of his sacred zebu herd. Members of the powerful Tsimahafatsi clan of Ambohimanga declared that his throne name would be Andriambelomasina. Reign. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana became an independent king upon his father's death in 1710, and the consequent partition of the Kingdom of Imerina, from which he received the eastern quadrant of Avaradrano, the largest piece. He established his capital at the village of Ambohimanga. The cultural and historical significance of this site was recognized by UNESCO in 2001 when it was declared Madagascar's first cultural World Heritage Site. Throughout his reign as King of Avaradrano 1710–1730, Andriantsimitoviaminandriana fought to strengthen the authority of his governance at Ambohimanga and attract residents to settle in the surrounding villages while battling his brothers to increase the land under his control. Expansion and management of territory. The expansion of Andriantsimitoviaminandriana's realm began with the capture of his brother Andrianavalonimerina's territory, which he ruled from Ambohidrabiby. The king led his brother to believe that they were on friendly terms and that they should work together to support one another. When the king launched a surprise attack on Ambohidrabiby, his brother was unprepared to deflect the offensive, and Andriantsimitoviaminandriana successfully seized control of the territory, which he incorporated into his own. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana gave 4 of his sons fiefdoms to rule. His son Andriantorana was given a lasura and lived there with his brother Andriamohara, who was not given a fief of his own to rule. He gave Ratompoindraoandriana the fief of Anosiravo and designated Andriampalomana to rule at Surangana. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana gave his adoptive son Rakotomavo the capital of Ambohimanga to rule after his death. Fortification of Ambohimanga. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana was the first to systematically establish a network of defenses around the royal residence on the hilltop of Ambohimanga. He built the site's defensive walls and its first set of 7 gates. He also undertook 3 expansions of the settlement, beginning with the expansion of Bevato, which he surrounded by trenches, and the creation of a southern gateway called Ambohidrabiby. This expansion was followed by the construction of trenches bordering a second adjoining space to the northeast with 3 access points. These he named Ambohidrabiby and Penidinamporona and Ambohidratsiambiambi, the latter a natural gateway formed by 2 boulders. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana then expanded toward the west to a series of natural defenses, including stony cliffs and steep forested slopes that obviated the need to dig defensive trenches. He instead constructed several additional gates, which he named Ambohidrabiby, Andrianambohangi, and Ambohidrantsimitoviaminandriana. In addition, the king sanctified a number of stones on the site. A stone he named Fidesiana became the site where all future sovereigns were to stand during their enthronement ceremony. He laid this stone at Ambohimanga with Andriamborona, the hill's first permanent occupant, in honor of Andriamborona's willingness to vacate the hill for the establishment of Andriantsimitoviaminandriana's capital. The king buried white and red pearls and a piaster beneath the stone, sacrificed a zebu on it, and declared that it would thereafter ensure the protection and sanctity of Ambohimanga. He also assigned 2 other stones at Mangenihani and Antsahamasina key roles in the royal circumcision ceremony. Decrees. This king established a number of enduring traditions in Imerina. A law imposing a fine on a homeowner whose house fire destroys neighboring property was promulgated by Andriantsimitoviaminandriana. He also established the rule that all citizens of Ambohimanga or Antananarivo should pass to offer hasana to the sovereign and wish him or her a long life if a fire ever broke out in their city, and that citizens should likewise congratulate the owners of houses that were spared from destruction if a fire had occurred nearby. He designated specific areas where water could be drawn for use in royal circumcision ceremonies. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana also created 3 formal ways of pronouncing a sacred and binding oath. These included the Maivli Rano, striking the surface of a body of water with a stick, the Milphanombi striking a calf with a spear, and the Misatrovakaka drinking water mixed with ashes taken from a king's tomb. After capturing Ambohidrabiby, he obliged all the Andriana nobles and other powerful figures in the community there to formalize their allegiance to him by enacting one of these oaths. Death. Andriantsimitoviaminandriana died around 1730 at Ambohimanga. His successor, King Andriambelomasina, entombed him at the Mahandrihono compound within the Rova at Ambohimanga.